How do I want to start this? See, I get nervous. You get to see me behind the scenes. I'm like, oh no. Hey, this is Nikki from 11th House Publishing, and today we are taking a skip through the DSM-5, continuing that series, and it's ADHD up on the docket today. So I thought I would take more of a kind of eclectic approach to this, off the cuff, see what develops from it. We have a couple of people in here that will be contributing to the discussion in various ways, and so it's a different format if you watch the autism one. I'm just going to be shaking it up as I go through, as is my way. So full disclosure, I likely have ADHD. I'm not diagnosed, but as I understand the elements of it and what has helped me to navigate it better in the world we're in, I am 99% sure is what I would say. So this will be interesting for me too, to kind of see what how the two elements interplay, like what psychology has to say on this, what society has to say on this energy versus what astrology has to say. And the purpose of doing this series is to integrate the two disciplines. And actually psychology has its roots in astrology. The Jungian principles come from astrology. So it's kind of a coming back full circle that I wanted to bring to this. And I think it can bring a spiritual healing to some of these diagnoses, because people will often be like, oh no, I got diagnosed with ADHD, it's the end of the world. Well, we're going to take a different perspective to it. And hopefully by the end of this, if that's been you, you can come at it from a more relaxed perspective of understanding and accepting your energy. And then maybe we got some tools for you, that can help work through it, again, in this society. I don't think it's necessarily a disorder. I think it's more oftentimes a case of trying to fit the square peg in the round hole, So does that make sense, guys?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, I'm going to share my screen then. Because I wanted to I'm going to start with all right. There we go. Trying to do multiple things at once, right? All right, so everybody should be able to see a natal chart up on the screen. So oftentimes people are like, what are you talking about, astrology? So if you didn't watch the first one on autism, I'm going to briefly kind of go over, all of us have a natal chart. When you're born, you take that first breath, there's frequencies that get imprinted on you, your cells wake up, and they're like, hey, okay, we got to be living outside of mom now, so let's get with it, and this is kind of your energetic blueprint for your life going forward. Then it's what you resonate with, and we've all been there, right? You vibe with somebody or you don't, and this is a visual depiction of what that is. So today, there's a lot to the chart. If you know anything about your zodiac sun sign, which most people do, thankfully. So I'm not coming completely out of left field here, but if you have your sun in Libra, for example, like over here it is today, that carries a certain amount of characteristics of, at your soul level, you want fairness and balance and harmony and things to be pleasant. There tends to be a people-pleasing aspect to this, but also very fascinated about relationships and what makes other people tick, because it's an air sign, very talkative. But also it can be, in that seeking of balance in one's life, oftentimes there's an overcommittal. You'll rob Peter to pay Paul and then end up being like, well, I can't be in 3 places at once, so Libras get that reputation for being a little bit flaky, which I think plays into the ADHD too. I think ADHD at its heart comes from that, just having a curiosity about all the things, and so it's hard to focus because you almost want to split into multiple people to be able to take the different paths and see what happens. So the air signs kind of always have that going on in some way, shape, or form. But there's a lot more to it. And so today I'm going to, I think, focus more on the planet Mercury here. And Mercury is our communication style. It's how we speak, how we think, how we take in information and listen, how we write. I do a Substack little writing astrological column every day with a little couple paragraphs just to kind of give you an idea of how the energy might be affecting your writing. So that'll be linked below if you want to check that out. I'd welcome the subscribers. And this is primarily what I'm looking at as we go through. So what Mercury rules then is all of those matters of communication, and you can see with ADHD how that would pan out then. So if you have your Mercury energy, your communicative energy in Earth energy, it's very grounded, that's going to give you the ability to focus in different ways than somebody who has their Mercury in air or their Mercury in water. And so right off the bat, right there, we're coming into play with like how we understand as a society that there are different learning styles, right? Of the visual learning method, the audio learning method, etc. So there is a recognition of that and a growing one, which I think is a great thing because it's not a one-size-fits-all box. You can just see here with this astrology wheel, we have all these 12 different energies within all of us to differing degrees. And so if you are only focusing on what is best for the earth energy, Capricorn, the Virgo, the Taurus, you're excluding and giving a disorder to the other energies. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so it's not necessarily that there's anything wrong with them, it's just within the system that you're putting them in. So Mercury zips as a planet, zips around the sun every 80 days. You know, goes retrograde about 3 times a year for a couple of weeks. And so it's always busy. It's the messenger god, right? Bringing the messages, the downloads to us. And it's the planet of curiosity too. Mischief also, if you if you look at Mercury's symbol here, I always like to say that he has little Loki horns. He's up to no good. So again, just and I'll open up the actual DSM-5 in a little bit, and we can look at the wording on this stuff. But you can, if you know anything about ADHD, already begin to see how it's like, well, yeah, they're just bored. You know, there is an element of that, wanting to do all the things, being hyper stimulated because Mercury is taking in all the information and processing it. And Mercury is the ruler of the academic mind, the monkey mind, or the higher mind, the frontal lobe. And something that I've recently discovered is that people who are neurodivergent, which ADHD is classed under, have 65% more neurons in the frontal lobe. So you can see if you're processing things more quickly, you're going to get bored more quickly, you're going to get burnt out more quickly, you're going to need more rest time. And I mean, Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year, right? It's like, just give me a second. I need to lay in bed because, oh my God, yesterday was so great, fun, but so overstimulating. And so I think it's a conversation that we need to understand how people are functioning in this way of maybe needing that grace of if they've had a busy day, maybe they need that next day as a downtime. Or is that meltdown happening because the child has just been way overstimulated and they're tired in ways that maybe somebody with a slower moving Mercury, like if they've got a Mercury in Taurus, is going to process things at a slower speed. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm seeing shaking heads. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing Jordan's shaking head because he is driving and listening.
I'll shake for Jordan.
Yes. More.
It's a nice drive. It's all country road right now.
Nice.
The only bad thing is it's 30-mile-an-hour speed limit where I'm at.
Oh, that can be hard, especially with the cops waiting for you. Yes.
I did
so,
see 2 cops. They were going the opposite way though.
all right. I don't know. I still get like freaked out when I see cops from my hooligan days back in the day. Yes, they're behind me. No, now I've just taken my mischief to another realm, right? So Mercury and actually the planet Uranus here, which we discussed a little bit more in depth in the autism end of things, but it also has a role to play within ADHD, I think, because it's just outside of the box in its energy. It's different. And both of these also rule the nervous system in astrology. And so you can see too, if you've got the nervous system firing on all these different cylinders, that's going to make a different communication style. Again, then what I see really is we have a very Tauresian, Capricornian world at its base. We live on Earth. We don't live on Mars, right? We live on the planet Earth. So it makes sense in some ways, but I also feel like it's unnecessarily medicating and stifling some great minds if they were just given the right environment to thrive. We wouldn't see some of these behavioral problems. We would be able to focus the energy maybe in different ways, or understand that Mercury is ideas and thought, and maybe harness that, and then somebody who's more grounded in their energy. And we all have Mercury somewhere doing something. So everybody to an extent has this. It's just a matter of what else is going on. These other energies all matter and grounding you out. So if you have a lot of heavy Saturn influence, here's the planet Saturn, for example, that is very structured, organized discipline. So you could have a Mercury that suggests ADHD, but if you have a strong Saturn, it can help kind of mitigate that and be like, okay, well, we have to order, so here's how we're going to do it, right? And Angela's given me permission to talk about her chart some. You have this. You have a strong Saturn in addition to a lot of ADHD energy as well. And so she's learned to couple the two. But if you don't have a strong Saturn in your chart, or I shouldn't say strong, but prominent, it's just not an energy that you're exploring in this lifetime. So it's not good or bad. There is no good or bad in astrology. It's all a spectrum. But it does matter in how it presents and how you choose to tackle this life. So today, actually, as we're talking about this is a chart pulled for today at 6:28. So right before I came on in Port Washington. That's what the energies are out, in the heavens. And they'll pull off of us. And so your birth chart will look something like this, but it's different for everybody. And that's why you'll have these astro weather reports that people do, where it's like, here's the overall energy, the chance of rain kind of thing. It's just following the flow of the energies of the universe. And today we've got Mercury sitting right here on the cusp, so the very end of Virgo. And Virgo is a Mercury ruled sign, as is Gemini. And so right off the cuff, you have Gemini being more air sign. So it's the more communication end of things, sitting down with you and me. It's the twins of the zodiac. So it's like, let's sit down and figure this problem out together. And I want to get to know you. And it's known for its curiosity, right? And all of these things. A lot, because I've looked at thousands of charts, done thousands of charts. I should have said that too. I've been a practicing astrologer for 10 years, and I've seen a lot of clients and looked at a lot of celebrity charts. And so that's where I'm kind of getting this information from too. It's just pulled out of nowhere. But a lot of billionaires and millionaires will have prominent Gemini, usually a Gemini rising. So that's their body, their initial energy. And it's because they're curious and they're willing to just do and go wherever the path takes them. And they aren't sitting still in class and learning the thing. They're out there doing. This is your entrepreneurial energy. So you're taking Mercury, the entrepreneur, it's actually the ruler of business too. is seen from here, and saying, sit there and make the donuts in a factory-like setting. And how many stories have we heard of really prominent people who either didn't finish high school or didn't finish college? You know, they went their own way. And so this is part of why, you know, so if we understand that about these kids with ADHD or even adults with ADHD, then you can start to give them the grace to follow that idea and the understanding that life is a journey, that sometimes they might follow this path for a little while and then jump onto another path and another path, and maybe at some point it'll all come together in a way nobody could have foreseen. It's like one of those conspiracy boards, right? And having the grace for that, not being like, well, you have to be in the same job for 50 years. You know what I mean? That is not for everybody. That isn't going to be for people who have prominent Mercury. And by prominent Mercury, I should say too, like not only is it if you have planets in Gemini, planets in Virgo. So right off the bat, if you're a Virgo sun or Gemini sun, you've got an element of this going at the soul level, this need to explore and be creative and so forth. Virgos tend to ground that, it's the earth energy. So Virgo acts as a kind of conduit, I think, between the Taurus and the Capricorn. It understands the need for practicality. It's like, yeah, we got all these ideas, but how do we mold them into something? How do we make them, how do we put one foot in front of the other to make that idea a reality? So you'll see Virgo be the more detail-oriented, practical implementation end of things. Can also get to be a perfectionist because that mind is always going and seeing all the different things that can go right and all the different things that can go wrong. So this is where your vibration comes into play with this energy as well. You know, you often will hear like, we are what we focus on. So if you're focusing on, oh, I have to be, you know, being your own worst critic, and I know a lot of authors are, right? They get to be perfectionists, myself included. I have a lot of Virgo, a lot of things in Virgo. And that's been something I've had to work through and overcome in my life. And it's my default. It's always my default, is this perfect. Even this presentation, Angela and Jordan can attest to right before this, I was like, even though I've been doing this forever, you know, over a decade, I'm very sound in my knowledge, but it's still, you know, is it going to be perfect? Am I going to remember everything? And so on. So the Virgo energy does tend to want to bring all of this into, okay, it's all great, these ideas are great, and what can we do with them? And you have to be careful not to be that own worst critic. One thing that really helped me, if there's any of you resonating with this out there, is you're going to get criticized no matter what you do. So fuck it, do what you want to do, you know, do what you're going to do anyway. There's always going to be somebody who doesn't like it, doesn't agree with it, doesn't see your vision, whatever. Your task is to stay on target into what you feel is your vision. And that's going to be something that involves the whole of your birth chart, not just Mercury. Mercury, I'm like, again, going on one little sliver that's very important, but the whole pie matters as well. So, and if anybody's interested too, I'll mention here, and then at the end, I think too, on November 2nd, we're doing a Authortunities Expo. Is the first one. So if you haven't joined the Authortunities Hub, there'll be a link below. It's an algorithm-free, what do you call it, Angela? Social network?
Oh, it's a social network
social
instead
community?
of a social media. But yeah, like a gated community where we can go hang out, but the gates are just so that we control it. And if, you know, well, that sounds mean. I was going to say, so if you want to come in and cause drama, we kick you out. We're just having fun and being supportive.
Yeah, so it's a good time. It's, you know, without the drama of Facebook deciding that it wants to make you have a bad day by showing you this, and that, right? That's what you're getting at with the control. It's very open, supportive for authors. And this expo is going on, and I'll be doing a more in-depth look at Mercury through the signs that I'm going to get into here. So if you're interested, please come, sign up. We'd love to have you. I'm also offering a chart and a report to anybody who signs up for my webinar. So we'll be able to and have time to kind of look at yours individually if you want to talk about it. So I think, and it's all free. So they're putting that out there too. Just
yeah, and I just want to put in my 2 cents. Nikki really knows what she's doing. That was because you read my chart, and that was very much where most of it I was kind of like, do you know me more than I know myself? So I'm going to say you really know what you're doing. That was very awesome. And I'm signing my husband up so he can go get his.
Yes, and that can be interesting too to see how things like the ADHD will run in families. Oftentimes, I say Virgo's cluster, like we live in the galactic Virgo supercluster, right? All these energies tend to come together, and it's funny to see that, and it makes sense though, right? Because it's your comfort zone. So. And understanding again that you can't be all things to all people. There's going to be people that just chafe at these various energies. You know, people that are like, "Oh, you're getting too detail oriented or nitpicky," that Virgo can get, or the Gemini energy getting to be too flighty. Like I always think of fairies with Gemini energy, you know, like flitting about, or butterflies, right? Like, so you're trying to trap that energy in a cubicle and then wondering why you're depressed, you know, as an adult. You know, there are people that love that environment and thrive in it. And they're the ones calling the shots for society right now. So that's why we have the world we live in. The world could be anything we decide it to be.
Yeah.
Like, let's make no mistake, humans are amazing. It's just right now, the Capricorn and Taurus energy has been more in control, and Virgo to a degree, right? It's the day-to-day routine is Virgo. It's also your health. It's taking care of yourself, you know, so being aware enough of your surroundings and yourself to be like, oh, did I exercise today? How healthy am I eating? You know, and this energy also on the negative end can tend to worry a lot, because if you're taking in all the stuff, and we talked about this with the autism function too, like the function within society can be, I see all the things and I'm supposed to be here to protect my tribe from every little detail, you know. So I'm seeing, you know, are the ravens in the sky over there, what does that mean? You know, and the leaves are rustling just so, or there's a little chill on the air, oh, there's a storm coming in, you know. So this hypersensitive nervous system had its place within society when we were more out in the wild. And I've said before too that, like, my daughter goes to a nature school, and the feedback from people who have moved their ADHD children who have either been, you know, diagnosed and on medication, or some just about to be, but they move them from a regular classroom into the Swedish model of being outside all the time, and they see huge changes in their behavior. So it's just a matter of thinking outside the box and being like, well, there's different places for these different children where they could thrive, you know, and you can see that too, because there's the leaves rustling, there's the birds, there's the things that can kind of take the pressure off of the mind wandering as much, right? So have you found that, Angela, that you enjoy nature walks?
Yeah, I used to really love nature, and I'd be in nature a lot. And then I did get Lyme disease, so that really, but I feel like that's an artificial drawing away from nature, but I still love to look at it. You know what I mean? Like, I just get real weird about being in the trees now, because the trees can give you Lyme disease.
Well, that's interesting. I also had Lyme.
Did you really?
Have you cured yours?
Yeah, to a degree. Like, I've read that you can't ever cure it, but I've maintained it where I'm doing
cured mine.
Have you? How'd you cure it?
Yes.
I mean,
No,
I
of
don't want to
course
detract
you
too
can't.
much
Yeah,
on this, but
you can't say cure, I guess, but
yeah. There's
have,
the ADHD. Oh, and now this has just become a seminar on Lyme disease.
yeah, I might cut that out before I put it on YouTube, or they'll be like, "Ah." But
Yeah.
we should talk. I have taken
Yeah.
care of mine to a significantly statistical degree of
Awesome. Yeah.
0.0000% gone.
That is so crazy. But yeah. So
And if anybody watching this is interested, let me know. Like, it's nothing I'm selling, anything like
yeah,
that. I will gladly share because it's a horrific disease.
it is very
Um,
horrific.
So, okay.
So weird.
So right now too, we've got Mercury here, in Virgo. So that's bringing that energy of detail orientedness with the sun, right? And it's about to go jump into Libra. So then the focus will be more on the relationships and bringing that balance and harmony that I spoke of for the next couple of weeks. But also, like, so you don't just have to be born with Virgo or Gemini, right? You can also have Mercury conjunct your sun, which it is today. So that'll, on the soul level, then fuse the energy of Mercury, whether or not it's in one of these signs. So as we go into Libra and Mercury is hanging out with the sun for a while, you'll get on that soul level those more, ADHD aspects. The closer it gets, you'll see that more. So that's where you get like the real fidgeting and can't stay still, right? I mean, the sun in astrology is our childlike energy, and so is Mercury, really. It's like curious child in all of us. So yeah, it wants to get up and explore and go do the things. It doesn't want to sit in your boring classroom or your boring meeting, right? It's just the energy. It's just we've pathologized it. So there's that. And then I'm going to stop sharing for a second and go find. I took your advice with not having the entire DSM-5 open. Last time I ended up having to cut out like 5 minutes
Oh
of that
yeah.
video while I was trying to get it to work and open up. And I just, I did a screenshot of the relevant parts. So this has already worked much better. So then we get into the DSM-5. So I've gone into the astrology of it, how, astrology is like a 5,000-year-old discipline where it's been trial and error. So to my mind, and Mercury is very scientific, as is Uranus energy. It's very like, show me, right? Show me how you came to your conclusion, show your work. And so astrology has 5,000 years of looking to the heavens and charting. That's why they call it a chart, right? Charting. Huh. Wow. That's interesting. We noticed that everybody with the sun in this section has these characteristics more prominently, and so on and so forth. So there's been this acceptance of, oh, yeah, that's the way they are. That's the energy that they're in, with, understanding astrology instead of trying to fit them into this mold. It's like, well, they're really good at this. We need somebody to think up a solution to whatever for the village. Go to the village genius, or go to that guy who's always thinking off the wall stuff. I bet they've got a different point of view, or in different ages that we've been in, burn them at the stake because they're going against the status quo. A little too much. It depends. So if we're using this energy to its fullest, it's understanding what is the environment that we can put it in, like the Google head hunting, being like, oh, you're diagnosed with autism, you're diagnosed with ADHD. We want your brain because you're picking up on things other people aren't. And they're the problem solvers. That's Virgo. That's the Virgo part of Mercury. So I need to fix the thing. I see the issue. Now I'm compelled to fix it. Whereas I feel like Gemini will also try to fix the thing until it gets bored. Or it might bring in somebody else to help, right? Be like, I see the issue. Now let's figure it out. I think of Elon Musk. with that energy. It's like, I'm going to get the best and brightest minds on this along with me, understanding that I don't know everything, but I have this vision, right? So, all right. So ADHD as diagnosed in the DSM-5, which takes more of a cerebral look rather than the soul look that astrology does, which also can be helpful. It can give us these tools and a greater understanding from a different direction, but it does tend to be a little bit more clinical in its approach. So we've got a persistent pattern of inattention and or hyperactivity, impulsivity that interferes with functioning or development. So here's where we get to, is it interfering with the status quo? It's not that the energy itself is a problem, but can it behave within the box when these energies are outside of it in nature, or moving maybe too quick and they're bouncing around the box? You know, I was talking to somebody a couple weeks ago who is diagnosed with ADHD, and he talked about as a child, they literally put him in pretty much a closet in school, and he was just left to bounce around in the closet with nothing. So that is not the way to handle this, right? And this was back in the day before they understood. And then he got his diagnosis, and they started working with him differently, but it's horrific, right? So, and he went on to become an engineer, a self-taught engineer.
That's
He didn't go to
awesome.
college. He went, taught himself, and then has been teaching other people, but running up against the system that wants him to have that piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
So you even with this, even though he's a genius in teaching other people, and they see that, like, wow, I don't know, you know, he maybe can't get the business funding that he needs, you know,
Yeah.
et cetera, because he doesn't have that slip of paper. So we need to start thinking outside of that as a society, that there are different ways to learn.
Mm-hmm. And different geniuses.
Yeah. And I think as a society, at least in the United States, we've come to realize that college can be a whole big money suck for not a whole lot of gain. I think the statistic, the last time I checked, which was probably about a decade ago, so I'm not sure what it is right now, but I can't imagine it's moved too much, or it might have even gotten worse. But it was something like 8% of college graduates are doing what they went to school for. So something related to their field. 8%.
Yeah, and if you think about it, from where you're standing, you probably can see that 8%. Like every single person that I know that has a degree, that I know well, I think one of them actually is using their degree, and they were miserable. They hated every minute of it and constantly kept trying to do something else so they could get out of it. And
Yeah.
like, is that what we want? Is that what we're going for here? And
Well,
and sadly,
yeah.
they passed away. They passed away never achieving any of the stuff they wanted.
Exactly, because you when you're in the system and trying to work within it, you try to find whatever niche you can that doesn't kill your soul, you know, or drain you mentally, right? You can see Mercury getting okay, come here, Mercury, stop moving and sit and do this repetitive thing for the rest of your life. We as humans, like, we all have Mercury somewhere doing something. So I think a lot of people can relate to that, right? Even as you might have a lot of energy that likes and needs stability, you know, and that's going to be your people who are like, I don't care, I just need to know that my house is paid for, you know, and that's fine. That's good on them. And I think we all have that in us too, of course, to one degree or another, although there are the energies that can couch surf and are fine with that sort of life too. But it is broadening that horizon, broadening that scope of what we will allow for, and that we change. We go through different changes. There's various cycles in astrology. So the sun is in one of these sections for 30 days. the moon takes 28 days to go around the entire zodiac. You know, there's different clocks. In fact, I have this book right here. It happens to be it's an astrology book about the cosmic clocks, that they're keeping time in a way we don't understand. You know, and we think we know maybe 4% of what there is to know about the universe, and we're probably wrong about that. That's what Neil deGrasse Tyson said. So what do we know? So I'm trying to help add to that discourse, or the discussion, I should say. So this isn't an attack on the DSM-5. I'm trying to see how we can work together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's important.
So let's see. Inattention. 6 or more of the following symptoms have persisted for at least 6 months to a degree that is inconsistent with developmental level and that negatively impacts directly on social and academic occupational activities. So again, you see inside that box. Be inside that box. Oh, hey, Jordan, can you mute yourself? Oh, I can mute you too, I guess, if I come back here. Oh, he muted. Okay. All right. So note, the symptoms are not solely a manifestation of oppositional behavior, defiance, hostility. That would be the defiance comes more from the Uranian energy of being the rebel, right? So that's important to understand too. Like if you have a lot of Uranian energy and Mercurial energy prominent, so with your sun, with your moon, with your rising, really a higher frequency or a louder frequency, I should say, in your energetic field, that's going to matter. Or failure to understand tasks or instructions. So this can sometimes come down to what else might be going on with your Mercury in your natal chart. So if you've got a Mercury that is just getting inundated with a lot of things, like a Mercury with Chiron, will do this sort of thing where it's just like there's this feeling that they took in for whatever reason that they can't learn correctly. And maybe that's because they don't learn audio well with audio, and they learn more from hands-on doing. In fact, now that I mentioned that, Mercury is the hands. It rules the hands. It's, again, with that Virgo-ness, the practicalness. So I know me personally, I learn better through doing the thing. And a lot of people do, again, because we have Mercury zipping past our suns every 80 days. So that conjunction on its own happens frequently. So a lot of us have this close to us, including myself. I have it with my sun, and I have it retrograde too, which I didn't get into, but having it retrograde is just like, it's basically closer to the earth, so you're getting more of that energy imprinted on you at birth. Or if it's stationary, it's sitting there and just like almost beaming directly to you. So that's going to have a more intense mercurial energy than somebody who has their Mercury as far away from their sun as they can. And maybe their Mercury is in Capricorn, far away from their sun. They're going to be able to focus in a way that somebody with Mercury conjunct their sun in Cancer is going to have a harder time, right? So there's that aspect to it too. And that's the case with all the planets. When they're retrograde, they're more intense. Okay.
That's super cool information. I can see like everything you're talking about. I'm like, oh, because you say, you know, everybody has a little bit of everything. I'm like, I can see that, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's why most people will be like, yeah, I can see not wanting to be in the cubicle form, but what are you going to do? Got to make the donuts, got to pay the bills, right? So if they have a lot more prominent Venus or Taurus or Libra, even, like that's the, I want things to be pleasant. Society has to run somehow. And so let's not rock the boat too much. Capricorn has decided it will be like this. Capricorn is the mountaintop, like the CEO energy. the government. Like, this is how things will go, and we are heading into an energy for the next 20 years of Pluto and Aquarius, which is all about shaking up that system. It's Aquarius
Thank
is the
goodness.
future of humanity. So Capricorn is the status quo, and we had 15 years of Pluto going through that. So the 2008 financial crisis happened when Pluto went in to Capricorn. And then it's been more of an unearthing of the corruption and what we don't want and what doesn't work in society. And now we're going to have a time of building it up, being more inclusive, which is the Aquarian energy of the individual within society. So this is a discussion whose time has come. This and others like it. I think that's why you're seeing a rise in awareness of autism and ADHD and how we can better integrate them into society instead of casting them off and leaving them to fend for themselves, especially when it's an energy that feels deeply connected and protective of society, wanting to make sure that the bear isn't attacking. So it's, at the head of the fortress looking out, scanning. It's Mercury is our perception at the end of the day. So if you have a highly attuned perceptive ability, that's really great for watching out for your people. But can you also understand that it's exhausting? So maybe if you have somebody in your life who needs 10 hours of sleep versus 6, that could be why. Running the brain is the most intensive system in the body, right? So little things like that. So yeah, the symptoms are not solely a manifestation. Oh, I already went into that. Okay. So often fails to give close attention to details or makes careless mistakes in schoolwork, at work, or during other activities, overlooks or misses details, work is inaccurate. So this seems to go against initially what I said about Virgo being detail oriented, but I think it rings more true with being hyper stimulated, maybe getting too much information so you get overwhelmed and you shut down. So not that you're making the mistakes on purpose, and then that person is also going to beat themselves up more for those mistakes by nature of this energy. I should have understood it and I didn't. It's so simple, but I froze because they gave me a time limit and the pressure got to me. It's stuff like that. That, or just plain, they don't see the points of doing the schoolwork or the activity. And so they're just not doing it. They're like, well, this is a waste of time for me. I'm bored with it. Can you make it more stimulating? And we've all been there, bored out of our minds at school or a meeting or whatever. This is a common common issue, right? But this is just saying, okay, it gets so disruptive that you can't fall in line, is what this is saying. Well, if you're vibrating at that frequency where it's literally in your soul, and it's like, man, staying put is just really, really hard. It's killing me on levels I can't even articulate. You're going to have those meltdowns or not be able to focus as much. So then you've got often has difficulty sustaining attention in tasks or play activities, has difficulty remaining focused during lectures. Do you have difficulty maintaining focus during lectures? I think we all can say.
Oh,
I'm
I thought
talking
you were
to you,
talking to me or Jordan. I was like,
anybody watching. How many of us have zoned out?
yeah.
A lot, right? Conversations or lengthy reading. Yeah, it can be hard to pay attention because the brain is always going, connecting dots, So that's where things like the binaural beats can come in. It's like, okay, this is stimulating a part of my brain now that allows me to just be over here and focused on this thing instead of all this other stuff coming in. Gives your brain something else to do. It's like running another program in the background. So And if you have a lot of other energies that let you buckle down, you might have this tendency, you might sympathize with it, but you're going to be able then to just be like, well, I don't like it, but I'm going to get through it, you know, and then I'll go off into my own world. That's what I did as a kid. So I was a very good student. I could sit there and regurgitate facts to you, but did I understand them unless I was passionate about it? No. Out my brain it went. Like I'd learn it, do the test, out my brain it would go into the next test. Like if I knew I'd be tested on it at the end of the semester, I would keep it compartmentalized. But was I integrating it? You know, did my A in algebra translate into a career in math? No. You know, it translated into a career as an astrologer and who you see before you today, you know. So often does not seem to listen when spoken to directly. Mind seems elsewhere, even in the absence of an obvious distraction. Well, yeah, oftentimes you'll be telling yourself stories. A lot of writers have prominent Mercury. So they're having a conversation with you, and even if it isn't a boring conversation, they might have another couple tabs open where they're doing other things. That's one way to look at this energy. So like having a lot of Mercury in your chart is going to give you multiple tabs open at any time. So you're multitasking, being in the car, Jordan, listening to this. You know, it's that sort of thing.
Are now cooking.
Or now cooking, yeah. Exactly. So it's also holding space as the person on the receiving end of this, that it's not maybe personal, that there's just a lot going on. And so they can also be having a conversation with you while doing whatever, usually. Sometimes you'll get the befuddled professor syndrome where it's like, oh, you get caught, you know, you're like, wait, what? What were you saying? You know, and then it's kind of embarrassing. So I don't know, like when I was in school, I'd get done with whatever task it was, and then I'd dream of my little characters that I would draw having adventures around the classroom. And I'd be like, oh, they're on the A right now. They just slid down. They're hanging off the B. They have to get up, you know. And so I was using my imagination, which is very mercurial too, to stimulate me while everyone else was waiting to get done, or you know, if the teacher needed to take time for something else, you know. But I also have a lot of energy, a lot more earth in my energy that can allow me to, if I need to, focus, you know. And again, not everybody's going to have that. So if you don't have a lot of earth in your chart, then you're going to be bouncing around. You're not going to be very grounded. So, and then it's just a matter of finding the earth maybe within your chart and how to work within it, where it is. Because again, we all have this somewhere. So often does not follow through on instructions and fails to finish schoolwork, chores, and duties in the workplace. Starts tasks but quickly loses focus and is easily sidetracked. Again, is this something that I'm able to be maintained in? Does it fill me up on a soul level? Will often be the case too. So it's like, well, I don't want to do your thing because I need to be over here doing my thing. I have my soul calling. Don't try to put me into your box. Right? So difficulty organizing tasks, keeping materials in order. So Virgo also often has the very organized, it's like, oh, you Virgos have to have a place for everything. That is an aspect. So if you're a high functioning Virgo, you have a crisp, clean house. You know, and that's their preferred state. They would much prefer it to be a nice, clean environment with everything in its place. Great. A lot of us are living chaotic lives for this reason or that. And so you might have your pile of stuff as a super Virgo, but you know where everything is within it. So you're still organized, it's just not organized on the outside. At least that's what I found to be the case. So it's organization in a different way, not in a way that's beautiful to the eye, presented to the eye, you know. And if you want to know how a Virgo's life is going, take a look at their clutter. Pretty much. Probably Gemini too, right? So often avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to engage in tasks that require sustained mental effort. Again, is it boring? Is it not stimulating them? Are you coming at it in a way that allows them to see the practical end of things? For example, with me, like when I was learning geometry, it was like, okay, this is sort of interesting, but it wasn't until I was done with geometry and I was learning to play pool that I realized that this is an actual practical application of some of these geometric, you know, algorithms. And I'm like, well, how much cooler would it have been if we took a trip to the pool hall as a class? Or we integrated that? Where might I be? You know? And as a human species, we have thrived on this mercurial entrepreneurial energy of being able just to go off into the woods and try to figure out the thing. How do I make the thing? Oh, look, I made the thing. You know, and I'm going to bring it back to my tribe and we can all benefit from the thing. Right? And so when you're coming at learning from okay, you have to learn from this ground up instead of take the thing and take it apart and from the top down, a lot of people, a lot of humans learn by taking apart the thing. A lot of engineers will tell you this. Like as kids, what were they doing? They're taking the thing apart and putting it back together, taking it apart, putting it back together, right? Is everybody still there? Did I
Yeah,
mute
I'm just.
everybody?
Still
No,
here.
can you still? Yeah.
You're just so enthralled.
Yeah, no, I'm just letting you. I'm just listening because it's so interesting.
Well, because I had to pull up the full screen for me to be able to be in this. So now
Oh,
I can't
gotcha.
see you guys.
Gotcha.
So I'm like, I'm just talking at this point. Oh,
Yeah, well, and I keep muting myself because I don't want background noise, but then I make a comment like a uh-huh, but I'm not unmuting to make the uh-huh, you know, so.
Okay, just making sure. Like, because, you know, you'll get tech difficulties and the whole thing will stop and not have recorded and you'll be like, oh, got to do it again. And the
Yeah, no, this
ADHD
is
energy
super
doesn't want
interesting.
to have to do it again. It's one of the
Yeah.
reasons I decided to off the cuff do this today, because once I do something, it's like I'm more easily bored and I want to go on to the next part of the DSM-5, you
Mhm.
know. So that's why I thought this would be a good time to just try this out and see how it flows. Okay, so often loses things necessary for tasks or activities. Yeah, where's my wallet? Where's my, oh, it's in my hand, right? It's that sort of energy, which I
Yeah.
think we all can relate to, but it happens to people with ADHD a little bit more. And again, it's because your brain is thinking of 1,000 different things. So sometimes the little things get lost. It's not a reflection of like how smart you are. It's like, oh yeah, you think you're so smart, but you don't even know your keys are in your hand. You know? It's like, well, yeah, because I've got 82 tabs open and I'm actively working on all of them. And then one day it'll just be like a lightning strike eureka moment and I'll be like, this is how it all comes together. Angela, does that sound familiar?
Oh yeah, I was like, that's how we function, isn't it? Like, is there another way to function?
Yeah, a lot of people do, but you know, again, the more you're vibrating at that Mercury frequency as a matter of going about your day, you're a mercurial person. You're gonna be more in that kind of almost harried energy, right? I've got to get all the things done. Want to get all the things done. It's all exciting. Like, oh my God. So a Gemini
Yeah,
has
every single tab is important of
exactly.
those
So
92 tabs.
exactly. I try to explain that to people. I'm like, no, but this section over here is for this thing that I'm working on. And sometimes my brain wants to go there. And so I do, you know, and I embrace it. And then if I hit a wall or get a little bored, I'll jump over to something else. It's like the writers who will have two competing works in progress, so they can go and like procrastinate with one with the other while still getting work done. There's a word to the wise. All right, and is often easily directed by extraneous stimuli. For older adolescents and adults may include unrelated thoughts. Yeah, it's harder to focus because you've been taking in all the information, and in the moment you're taking it in. Some people will, when they work, almost put blinders on, like either a hoodie up so that they are just focused, or like the binaural beats will do that for the brain. So there's these little tips and tricks that people have found over time to help them. So, and then is often forgetful, again, goes into that having a lot going on. So you'll need to utilize things like Google Calendar. You know, if you put whatever it is into the calendar right away, then you get pings. And you're like, oh, I have to do that thing. I want to do that thing. I would have been upset if I missed that thing. But
that's literally why I'm here, because my Google was pinging at me and I was like, what is going on? Oh yes, I have to get in here. So
exactly.
love Google.
So modern technology has begun to make our lives easier in that respect than they once were. And that's a good thing, because we all benefit as a society when we start allowing this energy to do its thing instead of saying you have to be this way. How about you follow where that kid is going with their learning? And I bet there's many mothers out there and fathers who see this in their children, and what has happened when you just sort of let them do their thing without interrupting them. Probably magic, right?
Yeah,
And again,
well,
understanding.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I always wonder what would happen to Mozart if he'd never touched a piano. You know, how many geniuses have just not touched their medium?
Exactly. And so if you're putting them in a one size fits all track, and I think that's what we'll be seeing more of, advocating more of different ways of learning. And then you're going to start seeing this morph, some of these diagnoses morph, and people look at them differently. And the DSM-5 is always changing as we understand this stuff more and how to work with it. How to do things like calming the nervous system. So if you are somebody who has a hard time focusing because life is just throwing a lot at you, or maybe you've dealt with a lot of trauma for being so different, you know, and being put inside a box you don't fit in for your whole life. Well, maybe doing things like EMDR could be helpful because it can calm that overactive nervous system down. Or watching your diet, eating anti-inflammatory foods, you know, making sure that you're exercising, etc. These things that can get the energies out in a productive way, that, you know, we can have these conversations now more and more, and especially with the internet, a very Uranian thing, the internet. It's bringing together the larger community to have these discussions. So then we got a big chunk dealing with hyperactivity and impulsivity. So yeah, it's just the often fidgets, taps hands or feet, squirms in seats. Again, it's not necessarily oppositional. They might want to be playing within the rules, but when you can see, again, when you're living lightning, essentially, yeah, you're going to be doing this. You got to get that energy out somehow. And maybe regular recess doesn't cut it for these kids, you know? So I know, like, again, Aisling School allows fidgets to be used whenever. So as long as they don't get like hugely disruptive of the class, they can sit there and have their fidget. They can have their stuffed animal. They can have whatever it is that makes them feel like they can be more present there. And it's not hurting anybody. But back in my day,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, the thought that you would bring something like that in. So we had to do things like, you know, you're not going to take my nails from me. So I would sit there and I would fidget with my nails in my ear. And it was a clicking. It was probably my binaural beats, right? And that allowed me to focus, you know, or just, again, tapping on the knees, tapping the feet, these things that we learn to do on the sly so that we're not too disruptive. But some people have even a harder time controlling that. Like if they're bored, they're going to tell you. when I was, I don't know, 3, something like that. I don't have a memory of this, but I've been told. I was in church and I got up. It was a big Catholic church. And I got off my mom's lap and I ran down the middle of the aisle and I said, "Why won't that man stop talking?"
That's hilarious.
That's this energy. Right?
Yeah.
And people laughed and I probably got in trouble. You know, because I did learn to just sit still. You sit in the pew at church, you know. But I love that, you know, it's that innocence of maybe saying what everybody's saying in their heads. Or a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's church." You know, they're showing it on and on about how my soul is going to hell. You know, and this kid's like, why is like, I probably looked around, right? Saw how bored everybody was and didn't understand why we were just sitting there listening to this guy.
Yeah, you were cognizant enough to understand nobody wants to be here. So why are we doing this? It's insanity, you know.
It is. So sometimes I wonder about that. I'm like, is it a disorder? I mean, it is if you look at the root word of the word disorder, right? Disorder. You're going against the order. So if the order is to sit down and not fidget, then yeah, running about is going to disrupt that. But is it a problem with you? Or is it a problem with a system that makes you do something like that? Or the situation that puts you in that box?
Exactly.
You know? So often leave seat in situations when remaining seated is expected. I just got done. Yes.
Well,
Flying around
and
a
I was
church.
thinking when you said that, I was like, oh, I have my own church story from when I was little. So I think we kind
Oh,
of tend to have those.
yes, you did the same thing.
Yeah, pretty much. I didn't have underwear on though. I dressed myself, and so I went down the aisle, you know, with my dress up. That's like 2 or 3,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep, that's this energy. It's very innocent in the moment, you know, and we demonize that. And when you do it at a young age, the kid learns, okay, it's not okay to be myself or to point out the obvious. You know, and that can be harmful. It can be stifling to creativity. It can take many years, lots of therapy before somebody accepts themselves. And I will say that about astrology, one of the things that I loved so much about it and why I became an astrologer is because I would be talking to family and friends about their charts and they'd be like, "You've helped me so much," is that knowing your chart, your individual chart, can help you accept who you are in a way that society has not. It doesn't matter what energy you are. None of them really get away scot-free. There's some that work better in the society than others, but it's all a bit stifling in its way, right? And so we have to be willing to think outside the box and try new things and grow. If you stagnate too much, the system will bulk and you'll get revolutions. A revolution can happen in a easy way, an intellectual revolution, a soulful revolution, or it can be a bloody revolution if things really don't change. The degree I ended up getting is politics, and I understood that we were very stuck as a society. I saw it at every level, you know, and wanting to always change that and having that be within me of, you know, everybody's bored and nobody's saying anything. My whole life I've said stuff like that in one way or another. You know, if we all just rose up and formed a union at this office max at 16, you know, we could get our demands met, and then people just blinking at you, you know, and be like, well, I don't want to lose my job. So, but it's a conversation that whose time has come more and more, and especially with the internet now, more and more people can be entrepreneurial. They can have their voices heard, and that's what 11th house is too. To bring it back to that, what I'm envisioning for this is to give voices to the neurodivergent among us who have been sort of cast out or made to fit inside boxes we don't fit in and are chafing in, You know, maybe you go to a traditional publishing company and they just don't understand your stuff, or it's not going to sell. They don't think it will sell. It doesn't fit into their algorithmic marketing scheme. You know, and I want to challenge all of that with this. So if you're finding that you're resonating with this and want to help with that, I am offering readings, natal chart readings in exchange for donations as we're getting up and running as an organization. So that'll be linked below too. It's a way to not only know yourself better, but help building the community. And I want to give authors that voice by publishing nonfiction and fiction alike, but also use the profits then from that for more awareness and education in the community about all of these things, and for implementing neurodivergent ideas about how we can do things differently. Grants and such available to help implement some of these things from that idea space into the practical. So it really is, at its heart, I want to take on this system from the ground up with you all helping. Like, everybody watching this is resonating to some degree with this message, or you wouldn't be here. You know, so whether you're able to donate and help out that way, or just get the word out there, or just keeping this in mind as you go forth, and like holding a little bit more space for the people in your life that have ADHD, or yourself, especially you, if it's you, you know. This your function within society is to be slightly outside of it if you're neurodivergent, and it's not a bad thing. So often talks excessively. Called out. Mhm. Yes, especially about our special interests, right? Things that get us going. It's hard to shut us up. But that's also like, well, you know, what do you want? It's a community. Mercury is communication. So especially if it's with the sun, right? That's the soul. So on a soul level, or if it's with the moon, which is the lower mind, the intuitive mind, it's going to be an off the cuff, right there, speaking what's on your heart, you know. So me having my Mercury retrograde with my sun, it's that wearing the heart on the sleeve type thing of just speaking that truth, and oh, there's consequences. You know, whoops. I didn't realize that was going to be taken that way because I didn't mean it from here. But we also have to deal with the fact that everybody has their Mercuries doing their own thing, and their perception is going to be different. And we've all seen this, right? So you can say something, but people aren't always going to take it in the way that you intended. I think that happens to neurodivergent people more often than others. And that's why. It's because it's just a kind of blurting out. There's an innocence to it. And some of the other energies will tend to want to put like the social niceties on things in a way that maybe doesn't at first come to mind, unless you have your Mercury in Libra, for example. Libra cares about that kind of stuff. So they're going to be more apt to run it right through that filter. It's not going to have to be an extra program running of, okay, what's the social norm in this situation? I have to run it through that filter and check those tabs before I speak. Otherwise, I'm going to get in trouble like I did last time. And now you got that tab open. Last time I did this, I got in trouble, and X, Y, and Z happened. And then it's like it casts chain lightning through your thoughts. So if you want to know why people are often feeling befuddled, or they can't focus, or whatever, it's because that one thought over there probably initiates a cascade effect through their whole brain as they search for connections. You know, it's the pattern finder. I've heard this sort of thing talked about. And it's, again, a very good thing in a million ways within society to be able to point out when things are the same as they were the last time the tiger attacked, you know. So, okay, now we're ready for it. But it also, that is our automatic function, or people with high Mercury in their energy, is they don't go through the social niceties first as their initial thought. They're cascading through a million things, a million browsers or tabs. They might also have multiple browsers open. I've done that. So often runs about and climbs in situations where it's inappropriate. Again, there can be a lack of a filter on that ability to sit still depending on the placement of this. Or a lack of desire to. So in that way, it is bucking authority, right? Let's see here. Often blurts out an answer before a question has been completed. Completes people's sentences and cannot wait for their turn in conversation. Again, getting back to that Mercury energy of being right there off the cuff in the moment, or there'll be a lag almost. And you can see this like with the internet and us communicating. Sometimes there'll be that lag and you'll be speaking over each other. That lag happens internally for people with this energy. So it's not like, oh, I'm being rude. I'm not trying to be, it's just sometimes there's a lag between me processing that you're speaking and me having that idea of that thing I want to say. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I really try not to do that now, but I do have that tendency, like especially when I was younger and I didn't filter that out. But I always thought of it as like, I know what you're going to say. I'm answering your question. I'm saving us time. It's obvious where you're going with this. So here's the answer that you're about to ask me. Let's move on. Exactly. I don't do that anymore.
Unless you get together with a fellow ADHD brain.
Right.
And then you end up absolutely exhausted finishing each other's sentences.
Yeah, but then it's an amazing conversation. It's like, you know what would be good? Oh my God, that's a great idea. I know, right? Let's do it. When should we do that? Let's do it Saturday. And then like you've had this whole conversation, but nobody can spy on you because they have no idea what you guys are talking about.
It's almost like telepathy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it can be, especially if you're in the same work environment, or you get this with twins, right? And they get their language. So, and again, Gemini energy is literally the twins. So you see how this stuff sort of merges back together. Often has difficulty waiting their turn. Yeah, butts into conversations. Yeah, that all fits. So hyperactive, impulsive symptoms were present prior to age 12. Well, yeah, that's when you're more apt to find out the hard way what's expected. If you don't find it out yourself, it's through watching a sibling, perhaps. Right? So there's that aspect too. So let's see if there's anything else. Several inattentive or hyperactive impulsive symptoms are present in 2 or more settings. And that's a good point too. Like, is it disruptive at just school? So is school the problem? Is work? Is it with certain friends and family? You pay attention to this sort of thing. Oftentimes I'll hear that, they're it's hard to function at school, but at home they don't have whatever issue that is, And so that's a good point in terms of how intense this energy is. And also maybe how rigid and structured home life is versus school. Again, I can speak for Aisling. I haven't had her diagnosed, but I know her chart. She has a lot of mercurial energy. And so she goes to school and she doesn't like, even though it is a nature school, it's still very much inside the box compared to how I run things in my house. I'm much more open and open to discussion and open to trying things a different way. And, because that's how I think, I've passed that on to her. And so, but if you have a home that is very structured, organized, time has to be, playtime is these 2 hours and then we're done kind of thing. And that's fine, that's how they run things, but it's going to chafe with this sort of energy that wants to go bounce around as it wants to. So there's clear evidence that the symptoms interfere with or reduce the quality of social, academic, or occupational functioning. Yeah, and that's where like understanding how your Mercury functions, you can then learn to work within it. So like I have my Mercury in Cancer, for example. I've learned that my emotions because Cancer rules the emotions, have to be in a good and stable place for me to be able to be optimally functional in whatever work I'm doing. So it just affects me more. Like there's some people who can have a lot of emotional chaos and still go to work and do what they need to do. I have to take care of the emotional chaos before I can function fully and be fully present. And so it's just holding space for that and being like, okay, if I'm going to be my most productive, I got to go scream at the moon tonight or whatever it is to get myself feeling more emotionally balanced. So the symptoms do not occur exclusively during the course of schizophrenia or another psychological disorder and are not better explained by another mental disorder. Because a lot of times you'll get overlap, right? Even the DSM-5 will tell you that. Or people self-medicating, you know, to try to deal with this sort of thing. Or things like Ritalin, right? That work maybe for a little while, but then are ultimately harder on other systems of the body. So if we can learn to work within that mercurial energy and give it its space, you're gonna find everything runs smoother for everybody. That's what I would say. So I'm gonna stop sharing now and come back so I can see your all beautiful faces. There, that's better. Better for me.
It's super interesting. Like this has been really interesting to listen to all this. Jordan, do you see yourself in any of what Nikki's saying?
Yes. I've been diagnosed with ADHD. I thrive better in nature. Growing up, I went camping almost every month. I was involved in the Boy Scouts, Order of the Arrow. I'm always restless. I have fidget toys I used to carry around at the sheriff's office to help keep me from getting angry at people and to help me focus.
Yeah, exactly. So you oftentimes will learn these self-soothing ways, but it doesn't always. Again, it does. It very much depends on the chart and what's going on with it and what's going on with your Mercury in addition to a bunch of other stuff. But you got to start somewhere. So that's why I was like, I'm going to focus on this for the moment. But it sounds like you figured out ways to get around that. I mean, you put out a book of poems. Like, you got to focus to put out anything like that. There is that ability to focus, but on things that you're passionate about, on your terms. And that shouldn't be seen as a disorder. Humans wanting to live life on our terms should not be made a pathology, is what I'm saying. And I think a lot of this can be seen that way. Because
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so did you guys have any questions? Otherwise, it looks like we went over a little bit. I apologize for that. I was trying to keep this at an hour, but it is what it is.
No, I think it's super interesting what you're doing here. That's why I'm kind of so enthusiastic about 11th house because, I was the kid that in school was always doing everything wrong. I think I spent my entire fifth grade, just sitting in the hall. Like I'd be walk in the classroom, go in the hall because we just couldn't see eye to eye. And so where would I be? So I never got along in school, and I left school in eighth grade. But where would I be if I had been in a place where like it didn't take me till I was 40 to figure out what the hell was going on? You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
and so that's what I look at these kids. There was a kid that I knew when I worked at a school as an adult, working at a school, and he went on Ritalin. He was that kid. He was the kid that as soon as the teachers, because I worked in the lunchroom as a monitor. As soon as I met him, the teacher told me, "Oh, he's a bad kid. Just go ahead and send him off to himself." And I wouldn't. I would, if he's going to do something, then I deal with it, but I'm not going to just automatically judge him. He was the smartest, coolest kid, and he was a magician. I'm talking like second or third grade. Probably David Copperfield. Like, I was mystified by how he was doing magic tricks. And then they put him on Ritalin or something. I'm not actually sure what it was, but he went on medication to help him with his behavior. And I actually thought he died at school one day because he just, his head popped on the plate, like, because he was so out of it and tired. And they were like, oh, we just have to adjust his medicine. You know, that was the response. And I'm like, you took a kid that was amazing, who never had all this misbehavior, whatever was the misbehavior. I never saw it with him. But he didn't want to talk about lunch. He wanted to talk about his magic tricks. So I would think of him, you know, and just kind of hope that he could get through that and found, you know. But anyways, that was my long-winded way of saying, that's why I support 11th House, to try to find the magicians and the Mozarts and the, you know, so each of us can be on our own path.
Yeah, exactly. It's a heartbreaking story. It's funny because in tarot, the magician is Mercury. It's one of the.
Funny. Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
So yeah, it was when he's able to do it on his terms and not being medicated and separated from this part of himself. You can think about like taking Mercury the messenger, right, and clipping his wings, or holding him back so that like he's kicking his feet and burning out. You know, it's just such a waste of potential.
Yeah, seriously. He had the abilities that he could have been like on America's Got Talent, like one of those kind of things, winning a ton of money instead of them trying to like suppress that. It was amazing.
Exactly. And I think the more we have an awareness of this kind of thing, you know, you can be like, well, what else can we do differently? Like, how can we approach this? You got a little genius on your hands. I mean, and to some extent, again, all humans, all of us have this. So it's not just a neurodivergent thing. It's just more prominent in us because of the outside of the box nature of it, you know. And we do need also, I want to say, the energies of stability, you know, and so that Capricornian energy, as much as I've gotten down on it, it does build us up as a society so we can have, so the system can work in some sort of way. We're not, you know, the trains run on time. We all understand traffic laws, you know. There are times and places for this, but I think, and I wonder about this boy that you just mentioned, had he been talked to and explained the why of your whatever you're doing, that was always a big thing for me. It was like, I will do whatever task that you need me to do if you can tell me why. What is the purpose? And if the adult took the time to say, because X, Y, and Z, then I'd be like, okay, whatever X, Y, and Z was, you treated me with enough respect to tell me. And so it becomes that too, that tit for tat, rather than how many of us heard because I said so.
Yeah. And that
For
makes
me, that was like,
never, he was fine. He never did any of these terrible behaviors that I've heard about. But we used to talk. Oh, you got to eat, you know, show me 3 magic tricks and then you have to eat because you only have this much time in lunch.
because you only have that much time, right?
Yeah.
It can be that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've noticed that with my daughter is, you know, and from a young age, I always did this with her. No, even before she could talk, you know, I would explain why I needed her to do whatever it was, you know, and I feel like we have a better connection now because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it can also just be as simple as that. If they have to be in whatever environment, because sometimes that's just life. We all understand that, right? Sometimes that is the way it is right now, but how can we make the best of it? Can we explain things? Can we treat children like little humans instead of, you know, children are seen but not heard, or what they think on this doesn't matter, you know, that sort of thing. So I think a lot of the negative behaviors of ADHD could be mitigated with just talking. Ironically, Mercury, communication. instead of just being like, here's a one size fits all. You know, would you say that's fair, Jordan?
Yeah.
Make you less angry?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Me too. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you two for adding to the discussion. It's
Yeah,
always good to get more
cool.
voices. That is what the 11th house is all about. Is, you know, it's the people's house. It's all of us coming together to build a better, brighter future. However that is. So if you want to get involved more, contact me. And I will be glad to work with you in whatever capacity as we're building up and getting this thing going. And this is part of it, just to kind of raise that awareness and to help. You know, I've been kind of being tugged to do something like this for a while, and I thought it fit really well. So we'll be going through next week, same bat time, same bat channel, in the Authortunities Hub. If you want to be live with it, I'll put that link below and you can join there. We'll be taking a look at another thing in the DSM-5. I haven't, with my ADHD, didn't pick it out yet. But it'll be something, and I'll announce it beforehand in the hub. So love to have you guys back another time as well. So
I will put it on my Google Calendar.
Have a very good evening, and I will hopefully see you guys next week.
All right.